Laura had always dreamed of having her own place. She was 26 years old, had a steady job, and after years of living with roommates, she finally found a small but charming apartment that she could afford. It wasn't in the best area of town, but it was cozy, affordable, and most importantly, hers. She moved in on a Saturday and spent the whole day unpacking, arranging furniture, and making the space feel like home. That night, exhausted but satisfied, she fell asleep quickly. But in the middle of the night, she woke up to a faint sound. It was soft, almost like the sound of bare feet stepping lightly on the ceiling. She frowned, listening closely. It didn't make sense. She lived on the top floor. There was nothing above her except the attic. She shook off the unease. Old buildings made strange noises, she told herself. Probably just the pipes or something settling. The next night, it happened again. The same soft, deliberate footsteps moving above her. But this time, she also heard something else. A faint whisper. Laura sat up in bed, heart pounding. Was it her imagination? She held her breath, listening. The whispering stopped. For the next few nights, the sound continued, sometimes faint creaks, other times what sounded like something being dragged. By the end of the week, she was sleep-deprived and on edge. One evening, while washing dishes, she caught something in the reflection of her kitchen window. The attic door in the hallway was slightly open. She turned around so fast that she nearly knocked over the dishes. Her hands trembled as she grabbed a kitchen knife and slowly approached the attic door. She reached up, gripping the handle, and pulled it open all the way. A musty smell drifted down. Holding her phone's flashlight, she climbed the small ladder and peeked inside. The attic was dark, filled with cobwebs and dust. At first, she saw nothing unusual, but then she noticed something in the farthest corner. A stain mattress, a pile of food wrappers, half-empty water bottles, and then, on the wall, a collection of photographs. Her breath caught in her throat. The photos were of her, so were taken from inside the apartment. Shots of her watching TV, cooking, even lying in bed. But the worst ones were taken from above. Pictures of her sleeping. Laura stumbled back, nearly falling down the ladder. She grabbed her phone and dialed 911, her hands shaking so badly she could barely type. The police arrived quickly. They searched the attic but found no one. However, they discovered a small, hidden opening in the attic wall, leading into the crawl space of the building. Whoever had been watching her was gone. Laura packed her things that same night. She never spent another night in that apartment. But sometimes she wonders, how many nights had she slept peacefully, unaware that someone was watching her from above? Daniel had always walked home from campus. He liked the quiet, the routine of it. His route took him through dimly lit streets and past empty parking lots, but he never felt unsafe. Until that night. It started with a feeling, a strange, prickling sensation on the back of his neck, like he was being watched. He glanced over his shoulder and noticed a white van driving slowly behind him. At first, he ignored it, probably someone looking for a parking spot. But as he continued walking, so did the van. It wasn't speeding past him, it was matching his pace. He crossed the street. The van did too. His stomach twisted. He kept walking, his mind racing. Maybe it was just coincidence. Maybe he was overthinking. But then, up ahead, the light turned red at a pedestrian crossing. He stopped, waiting. The van pulled up alongside him and stopped too. He glanced at the tinted windows. He couldn't see inside. The light turned green. He rushed across the street, his pulse quickening. The van didn't move. It just sat there, idling. He forced himself to stay calm. Maybe they weren't following him. Maybe it was all in his head. Just to be safe, he ducked into a 24-hour convenience store and lingered near the back, pretending to browse. 5 minutes passed, then 10. When he finally stepped outside, the van was gone. Daniel let out a breath of relief and started walking again. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out. A message from an unknown number. "You're faster than I thought. We'll see each other soon." His breath caught. His fingers trembled as he typed back. "Who is this?" No response. The rest of the walk home, he felt watched. Every shadow, every passing car made his skin crawl. But when he reached his apartment, nothing seemed out of place. He locked the door and forced himself to calm down. Maybe it was just a prank. The next morning, he looked out his window and felt his stomach drop. The white van was parked right outside, just sitting there. His phone buzzed again. Another message. "We'll see each other soon." Daniel called the police, but by the time they arrived, the van was gone. They told him there was nothing they could do. The messages kept coming for weeks. Always the same words. "We'll see each other soon." One night, he woke up to the sound of his phone buzzing again. But this time, it wasn't a message. It was a call from the same number. He stared at the screen, heart pounding. He didn't answer. The next day, the van was gone. The messages stopped. But Daniel never forgot the fear of knowing that someone, somewhere, had been watching and waiting. Javier had always been a night runner. He loved the quiet of the city after dark, the cool breeze, the feeling of solitude. His usual route took him through a large park near his apartment. A vast, mostly empty space with tall trees, winding paths, and a small playground near the entrance. He had been running there for years, and nothing had ever made him feel uneasy. Until that night. It was a little past 10:30 p.m. when he entered the park. The place was completely deserted, just the way he liked it. His feet pounded against the pavement, the rhythmic sound filling the stillness around him. The only light came from the occasional lampposts, casting long, eerie shadows on the ground. As he neared the playground, something made him slow down. The swings were moving, not wildly like the wind had caught them, but gently, as if someone were sitting there, swaying back and forth. And then he saw her, a little girl. She was small, no older than 6 or 7. She wore a white nightgown that looked too thin for the cold night air. Her bare feet dangled just above the ground as she swayed lightly on the swing. Javier stopped. A deep, unsettling feeling settled in his stomach. What was a child doing alone in the park at this hour? He looked around, expecting to see a frantic parent nearby, but there was no one. Just him and the girl. He took a cautious step forward. "Hey, are you okay?" he called out. She didn't react. He hesitated, glancing around again. Maybe she was lost. Maybe she had wandered away from home. He took another step forward. "Where are your parents?" he asked. This time, she moved. Slowly, she lifted her head. Javier felt his stomach drop. Her face was too pale. Her eyes, dark and empty, stared straight through him. And then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, "It's too late. You shouldn't be here." A cold chill ran down Javier's spine. Something about the way she said it, so flat, so emotionless, made his entire body tense. "What do you mean?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. She didn't answer. Instead, she suddenly jumped off the swing and ran, straight into the woods. Javier's heart pounded. "Wait," he called out, but she had already disappeared into the trees. He hesitated for only a second before running after her. The woods were dark, almost pitch black beyond the reach of the lampposts. His breathing was heavy, his pulse racing as he pushed past branches and undergrowth. "Little girl," he shouted, "where are you?" No answer. He stopped, listening. Silence. Only the sound of leaves rustling in the wind. Then, somewhere in the distance, a giggle. Soft, childlike, but something about it made his skin crawl. It didn't sound right. It sounded too close. He turned sharply, his eyes scanning the darkness. Nothing. But then, a whisper, right behind him. "It's too late." Javier spun around. The girl was standing there, just a few feet away. Her head was tilted slightly, her dark eyes locked onto his. She wasn't breathing hard from running. She wasn't even moving, just standing there, staring. Javier took a step back. Something was wrong. "Who are you?" he managed to ask. The girl's lips parted slightly, as if she were about to answer. Then, a hand grabbed his shoulder. Javier jumped and whipped around, heart nearly leaping out of his chest. It was a park guard. "What the hell are you doing out here?" the man asked, frowning. Javier turned back to point at the girl, but she was gone. The guard followed his gaze, then sighed. "You saw her, didn't you?" Javier stared at him, his mouth dry. "What do you mean?" he asked. The guard gave him a long look before finally speaking. "You're not the first one," he said. "People have been seeing her for years. Same spot, same time of night." Javier felt his stomach twist. "Who is she?" The guard hesitated. Then, in a quiet voice, he said, "A little girl disappeared in this park a long time ago. They searched for days, but they never found her." A cold, sinking feeling settled in Javier's chest. "And the people who see her?" he asked. "What happens to them?" The guard exhaled. "Some say nothing. Others, well, let's just say not everyone who runs through this park at night makes it back out." Javier felt the weight of those words settle deep in his bones. That was the last time he ever ran at night. And even now, years later, when he passes by that park during the day, he can't help but glance at the swings. Sometimes, when the wind is still, when the air is unnaturally silent, one of them moves, and in the distance, he swears he can hear a giggle.